All right, video number 4 related to the signature assignment includes the last section on page 7 of the common assignment or the signature assignment case study document. All right, now in this particular part of the assignment, we're considering what's called social responsibility. Now, these are some potential interventions you could use related to external, meaning outside the therapy room, basically, that an individual could encounter in a public setting. Now, there are 5 listed there on the bottom of page 7. The first one of those is grief support groups. Second is MHMR in the Wichita Falls area. That would be a notation to the Helen Farabee Mental Health and Mental Retardation Center. You can do individual therapy. You could do inpatient hospital facilities, or you could do group therapy. Now, you are to select 3 potential resources in this case. I promise 2 of them you can easily exclude, and there are some reasons that I will provide for you in this video why you might want to exclude them. But first, let me describe them. Grief support systems, grief support groups. You'll find them in all kinds of settings. They are similar to things like Alcoholics Anonymous, which is AA. NA is Narcotics Anonymous. You can find different types of support groups related to sexual addiction, all types of addictions, and in this case, you find a possible listing related there to grief support. Grief support groups and other support groups are, of course, groups of people who provide assistance to one another in the discussion of their particular concerns. In this case, the individuals would be talking about grief and how they have dealt with that grief across periods of time. You cannot guarantee the confidentiality of a support group. There is an expectation of confidentiality, but again, confidentiality cannot be guaranteed in support groups. MHMR is another potential resource for Mr. Soprano. However, generally speaking, broad brushstroke here, typical MHMR provisions or resources are usually made available for those who have difficulty with access to services. Now, in what case would an individual have trouble getting access to a doctor, let's say? In those cases, it's usually because of no insurance or because of the amount of income a person makes or does not make. But again, for local MHMR concerns, it is usually going to be offered or made available to those individuals who do not have access to regular care, usually because of a financial limitation. In this case, I doubt that Mr. Soprano, considering his history, is going to have any difficulty with finances. Might not be one of the best options. How about individual therapy? Individual therapy is exactly what you think it is. Individuals doing their own therapeutic work on their own time with a schedule and a specific person or helper, therapist, licensed person to help them in that regard. Individual therapy in this case is probably a reasonable choice. Inpatient hospital facilities, usually, and again, one of the challenges related to psychology is that you deal with usually and most often, but very rarely do you come up with always. So in this case, inpatient hospital facilities are usually reserved for individuals not only who have access, but in cases where the potential for self-harm is imminent or ongoing. Imminent meaning I am expecting someone to hurt him or herself, or I know that this person has either hurt him or herself or someone else. In those cases, access to an inpatient facility is warranted. Yes, Mr. Soprano has had thoughts of self-harm according to the case study. Are those thoughts ongoing? Would be the question you needed to ask if you were going to use inpatient hospitalization for an intervention here. Is the concern for his physical safety imminent? In other words, is he hurting himself now? Is he going to leave your office and go harm himself on the way? Or do you know of someone who is currently in danger of being harmed by Mr. Soprano? So without those criteria, the likelihood of using inpatient hospital facilities is probably pretty slim. Now, group therapy is an option in some cases. It varies from grief support in that it is usually managed by a licensed clinician. The purpose of the group therapy is for the group as a whole to provide the therapeutic pieces necessary to help each of the members get better. In other words, the clinician typically facilitates the group, manages it, as it were, and provides the individuals with information they require to offer assistance as well as potential interventions for the other members of the group. It is very much like support groups, but there is a therapeutic twist. So in this case, you're going to pick 3. I would suggest very carefully that when you're dealing with other people as it relates to grief support, those in most circumstances are going to be pretty helpful. MHMR is not going to be helpful when you have a person who is able to provide his own access to care. Individual therapy, always warranted. I am a firm believer that every individual on the planet needs to visit with someone at least once. Inpatient hospitals are typically going to be used when there is potential for self-harm that is imminent. Again, we may have thought about it in the past, but the fact that it is not occurring at the moment might limit inpatient facilities. And group therapy, again, is always a reasonable option, similar to support groups, but with a therapeutic understanding as a part of its function. Now, altogether, you're going to be providing information related to a diagnosis. You're going to select one diagnosis related, and we will have already done this part of the assignment, but you will have provided the diagnosis. You will have looked at 2 of the possible interventions at a personal level. You will have provided information related to an IQ score as well as the range of scores and the fact that his score falls in the 45th percentile, what those pieces of information mean. And then as a last part of the exercise, you will provide 3 potential social type interventions that could be helpful for Mr. Soprano, bearing in mind you will need to help me know and help me understand why you are excluding the other 2. If you have any other questions or concerns about the signature assignment, don't hesitate to let me know. Like I said earlier, I'm not hard to find. See you soon.